All right. What's up? Tom and Girl back again for another live coding session tonight actually. We're going to be continuing. This is session 4 of our live coding series where we're building a React Native app. The idea behind this again was to try out RecoilJS, a new state management library for React. And we're going to be building this app with React Native using Expo, React JS obviously, and RecoilJS. We also are using TypeScript for this. So again, this is the 4th session. The other 3 sessions are posted on YouTube. If you want to watch those, you can also catch them in my recent broadcasts here on Twitch. I have my Twitter handle below, as well as the GitHub repo. On my GitHub, you'll be able to find the code for this repository. It's called Brewbook React Native. It's open source, so you can pull down the code, follow along. Again, we're on the 4th session here, so we've already done a bit of stuff, but it's all commented, and you can see the code, watch the videos. Just follow along. If you don't feel like coding along, that's fine. Just watch along. We're going to be doing, like I said, we're going to continue with that today. I'll catch us up on where we were at. I'll go over where we went on session 1, 2, and 3, talk about where we're at and where we're going to be headed. And just to catch everybody up on some future posts here. So what I'm going to try to do is once we wrap this one up, I'm anticipating maybe 2 or 3 more sessions, maybe less. We'll see how far we want to go with it. Starting to do a few more like one-off series here. So we'll finish up this app, and then I'm thinking about doing a session on building a profile, like a online portfolio page using Gatsby.js. It's something I've been wanting to try out. I don't have a portfolio page myself. I should probably have one. Everyone seems to have one these days. And so using Gatsby.js for that, which will give us some really cool templating. It's using some really great technology like GraphQL, has awesome performance, uses React under the hood, and lets you code stuff in React. So I think we'll check that out. I also mentioned during the process of this where we wrote, we pulled in a library for using memoization. So maybe doing a series or just a one-off session on writing our own memoize function. So some of the things I've been thinking about. So more to come on that. I'll be posting about that on Twitter. I'll also post some updates on my Twitch. But yeah, so after we finish this series, definitely keep an eye out for some of those one-off series, building a portfolio page, writing a memoize function. Another one I want to try out is using React hooks and using Portal, maybe to build like a modal component. It's something I've been doing at work, so why not apply it here? So we'll see where we go with it. I'm expecting some cool stuff in the future. So if you're hanging out and watching these videos, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Again, if you want to hop on Twitter, give me a follow there. Also, same name on YouTube, Tom McGurl. You can check that out. The videos are posted there as well. And yeah, follow on Twitch if you're interested in this. And I go live Tuesday nights from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. I'm going to keep up with that cadence for a while, and I hope to add some, another night going forward and do this a little more often. We'll see how it plays out. All right, let's jump in. So first, I'm just going to adjust this here for you. There we go. I'll put that over there. I changed my camera, so there we go. All right, so I'm just going to kind of go over what we were doing. So in our first session, we started out where we scaffolded an app using Expo. So here's Expo. We use this to actually initialize our app, scaffold it out, get the basics going. It gives you so much out of the box. I mean, Expo is really fantastic. I've delivered 2 production apps with Expo, one for my previous company and one for my own personal fun. And it was super awesome, not even just for the initial release of the app, but even ongoing and supporting it. It was really easy to use out of the box, gave us Android and iOS, and allowed us to push JavaScript to do updates. So fantastic library if you're looking to write anything in React Native, and even just like to experiment and play around with some of the mobile APIs, which we'll be doing here. Really, really great. I highly recommend it. It's like the create React app of mobile, and cannot speak more highly about Expo and the folks over there. They're constantly pushing out updates, making it super easy to update, so highly recommend. The next thing we've been using is RecoilJS, new state management from Facebook. It's experimental, came out over the past few months. I guess been in development for a while, but they kind of launched it during COVID, so they have an awesome video down below where one of the principal engineers kind of goes through what it's for, what the methodology behind it is, and why it was created. So fantastic. We've really been enjoying using it so far. We've only dug in a little bit, but so far we've had some really great benefits. State sharing between different components across our component tree with minimal re-renders and minimal impact on the application as a whole. So really, really great so far, and I'm sure we'll get more into that soon. And then here's the app that we are actually trying to build. It looks nothing like this right now, full disclosure. We'll be getting there. We'll be doing some more styling. But right now we're just kind of testing out Recoil, testing out what it's like to use it as a state management. But we'll get to the styling. We'll start to make it look a little more like this. So let's talk about the code a bit. So let me close this here and pull up that. So here what we have is our code base. Let me just go ahead and close some of these so we can see what's going on. So we have our atoms, that's part of Recoil. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna run my server so we can see where we're at. So while this is starting up, basically where we left off, our last session was trying to actually persist these beers that we are cataloging. So the whole concept here is we're building a craft beer cataloging app. We're calling it Brewbook. It's an app I've used to try out many frameworks. Back when I was doing Backbone, I used Brewbook to try out using Backbone with React. And when React first came out, I've used it to try out Ember. I built it with Angular. I built it with Elm. So it's a good one for me to kind of get experience with seeing how different state management libraries work in different frameworks. Similar to like what you'd see with To Do MVC, this is just my version. And so, yeah, make it your own. If you want to pull down the repo, you don't have to do beer. You know, if you want to catalog, like I've said before, you know, video games, books, wine, I don't know, TV shows that you want to watch, and ratings, anything, right? Very simple app. Not something we're going to release into production. Probably wouldn't be that useful. But, you know, it's just a really fun experiment. And so here I have my Expo running. They give me this awesome barcode. I could scan that on my phone and pull that up. But we also can just run it in the web or in the iOS simulator. So I'll queue up the iOS simulator so we can see what that looks like. And so it's going to compile the code. It's going to pop open my iOS iPhone X simulator. Now it's worth noting, if you are trying to pull down the repo and do this yourself, in order to run the iOS simulator, you do need to be running on a Mac device. It needs to be running OS X. And that's because the simulators will only work with the Xcode tools, which are only available for OS X. However, if you aren't on a Mac machine, you're on a Windows machine, which a lot of developers are using these days. They have some fantastic laptops and desktops. You can still run the web browser, and you can absolutely still run the Android device. And if you have your own iPhone, you can just pop it out of your pocket and scan that barcode. All you need is the Expo app on your phone. I have an Android phone, so I will show you what that looks like in a few minutes here. That would probably be pretty cool. But yeah, if you're running on Mac, you can just use the simulator. And you'll see here, might be a little small and hard to see, but it's compiling the code and it's going to run it on this iPhone X. I'll also pop open the web browser. We'll do most of the development with the web browser, and the reason for that is part of testing Recoil is we want to see re-renders and component tree, and we have those nice, awesome React dev tools when we're working in Chrome. So it's just nice for a debugging story to use Chrome for this kind of stuff. That said, you can absolutely use the debugger with the native. It's just a little more tricky. So here it's saying can't find variable local storage, which makes sense. We coded our device storage using local storage. What we'll want to do now is have a check to detect what platform we're on and pick the appropriate storage mechanism. For the web, that'll be local storage. But for a mobile device, we're going to be looking at something called Async Storage. It's a platform agnostic storage for mobile devices. So it'll work for Android and iOS. I don't believe it'll work with the web. That's why we wrote it to use local storage, but I might be wrong. Expo might actually have async storage working with web. We'll have to try it out and see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this for now, and I'm going to open up the web version so we can see where we're at. All right. So while that's spinning up, I'll just pull up the code here, and we can kind of go over our component tree and structure a little bit for everybody. So the first thing we have, again, just to go over things, is we were using Expo, and we actually scaffolded it out with React Navigation. And that gives us the option with the tabs on the bottom, which you'll see that we have our brew list and then the add brew tab. And we'll be changing that as we change our design. But so it gives us that out of the box. And we have this nice navigation component. And inside our navigation component, we have a root navigator and the ability to link to different tabs. Our bottom tab navigator, which is where our actual tabs are configured. So you can see here we have our brew screen and our add brew screen. Those are the two main screens that we're working with here. So our brew screen is going to render the tab 1 navigator component, and our add brew screen is going to render the tab 2 navigator component. Now, we didn't change the name of these, although we probably can and make them a little more specific. But what those do is they are stack navigators. A stack navigator, you're going to see, is going to allow us to actually add stacks within. So we have our bottom tabs, the two on the bottom. So when you click one, it shows one screen. When you click the other, it shows the other screen. But then within that screen, we'll be able to add stacks. So maybe we have like the master detail view. We click it, and we go to the brew detail. We could do that from within the same tab using the stack navigator. And I'm sure we'll end up diving into that as we get a little further along. But for now, the two tabs are sufficing. So the all brew screen and the add brew screen. So our all brew screen is this bit here. It's just a basic view that's rendering our brew list. And our brew list, oh, and I also see, might as well get rid of this. I see an unused component there. So now going over to our brew list. So our brew list is going to list out our brews, and I'll show you here because it's now open. Whoa, let's make that a little bit nicer. So here's our app. Obviously looks nothing like this yet. We're getting there. We're getting there. It's slow, but we'll get there. But yeah, we have this app running here. We have our list of brews. You can see this brew on the bottom. This was what we added last week. So if you were with us last week, you saw us add this and persist this. The rest of them, though, are coming from a hard-coded list for now. And that's just so we can generate out some beers before we actually have the ability to add our own, which we do with our form, which I'll show you in a second. So here's our form. So this is where we actually can add brews. And I'll show you what that looks like in the code base here. I'll put up on this side here. Our add brew screen. And our add brew screen is just basically leveraging a few text inputs to allow us to input those new brews or beers. And what we have here is we have one for the name, one for the brewery, one for the style. We commented out the one for the rating because last week I discussed maybe pulling in a library that'll give us those 5 stars to let us actually do the rating. And I think we'll do that. And we'll add more to this as we go. Obviously, with our designs, we have adding an image, adding a description. So as we start to add more forms, we'll be able to pull these in and maybe a component for this. And here, when we add the image, it'll be pretty cool because we can actually hook into our mobile device and open up our gallery of images so we can snap a picture of a beer, put it in here, or pull a picture of an existing beer. And it's going to be cool to see how easy Expo makes that. It's one of the reasons we're using it for this, right? And then we also talked about our style. Right here we have it as a drop-down. But in here, it's just an input. So we're talked about maybe having somewhere like an API to pull different beer styles from and giving you a few suggestions or letting you go freeform. Because as we know nowadays, they get super funky with the styles. You could have like lactose, oat whipped, slushy style, hazy, sour IPAs. So people get funky with it. So we do want to give them that freeform input. So we're just starting with that for now. All right, so we have our add brew and our brew list. Now, just want to go over really quickly where Recoil plays into this, because again, this is part of this whole experiment is trying out Recoil. So the way we built this is that we wanted it so that when we modify a brew, it'll change that brew item without re-rendering the entire list. And we wanted to actually play with Recoil and see how Recoil allows us to modify different parts of state while only affecting the other components that listen to that part of state and not necessarily the siblings and other nodes in the tree. As an example of that, I have here, this is opened up and I have the React Dev Tools hooked up to this. You can see those here, right here. And I have this option checked, highlight updates when component renders, and this will allow us to see the re-renders. So what I'm gonna do, I'm going to go ahead and click stuff. And you can see I'm updating the rating here of Darth Maul to this beer. It's Awesome Black Saison from Red Tank, a local brewery. And you can see it increasing and decreasing. And you can see only this item's rendering and the average rating. And the reason for that is we have a single recoil atom for each of the beers, and then the average rating is using a selector, a recoil selector, to pull in all of the different brew ratings and create an average of them. Normally, if we were dealing with something like context, where the brew list had all the brews and we made a change to a single item, the other items would re-render. Of course, we can memoize them so that they don't re-render when they're not changed, but you would definitely see the wrapper list item re-render, and that's not happening here. So if you look back, I think it was session 2 where we actually hooked this up, you can see that the whole list was re-rendering. We added the memo on each of the items, so those stopped rendering, but then we fixed it so now the list isn't rendering, just the item and the rating. Not really useful right now, the rating. We just did that kind of as a test. So, all right, let's jump in. So our brew list right now is getting its brews from this brew list state. That's one of our atoms. It has the hard-coded list. And what it's doing is it's taking each of those, it has an ID assigned, and we have basically, we take this list of brews, and when we start up the app, we're going to try to check and see if anything's persisted in device storage. If it is, we're going to pull it out. So the way we do that is we try to grab our brews from local storage, and we try to parse them. If they're there, we'll use them. If not, we'll use these fallback brews. And then we'll set those as our brew list state. So if you look, we can open up our application tab, and this is going to allow us to see local storage. And here you have your local storage. We have our brews, and you can see there's our brews. Now if I delete that and I refresh, you're going to see dangerous precedent go away, and that's because that's not in our hard-coded list. So let's refresh. So here it's going to check get item. It's going to try to grab our brews. There's nothing there, so it's going to use fallback brews and hydrate that list. And there, so dangerous precedent is gone, and there's our list of defaulted brews. Now when I add a brew, I can add that back in. Go ahead and add that. And there it is. It's now populated local storage. I can refresh. Our brew string is there. It's going to parse it and select that. And there. Now we have our dangerous precedent IPA back. Again, we saw that this wasn't working on the mobile device. So let's go ahead and start this session. Now that we're already 18 minutes in, let's start it by persisting to device storage if we're on a mobile device. And for that, we're going to use Async Storage. So let me go ahead and pull out Async Storage so we can see what that looks like. I'm just going to go to the Expo docs. I mentioned this last time, but it's worth mentioning. The Expo docs are fantastic. And when they don't need to, when they're just talking about a component that's part of React Native itself, they'll link to that documentation and mention that documentation. They've done a really great job. So what I'm looking for here is Async Storage. They even have the docs for the different versions. I believe we're on version 38. I can verify that by going over to my app.json. Oh, actually, they took it out of here. So I think I have to go to my package.json and go to Expo, and I can see, yep, we're on version 38. So that's what I'll use. So I'm at the Async Storage docs here. Let's see what we got. It's a separate install. So let me see if I've already installed it. I have not, so I'm going to go ahead and install it. Stop that. So Expo install will install the library and link it. Linking is another step when you're using React Native. It has to be able to link those JavaScript libraries so that it can properly compile them in the output code. If you've ever worked with React Native before Expo, you may remember you had to npm install and then manually link. Sometimes you'd even be dealing with CocoaPods or Gradle, depending on if you were using native Android, native iOS stuff. With Expo, the benefit is you kind of just stay inside the JavaScript ecosystem. So if you're not familiar with those native technologies, you can just look and see what components Expo has provided or the community's provided. And I mean, I've built 2 full apps where I've never even touched the native code because Expo usually provides such great stuff. And even in terms of like data visualization, I was able to use Victory Native, fantastic library for data visualization. If we add some to this app, I'll be using that. Animations have been easy with React Navigated or animated. So you really rarely, at least for these types of apps, need to dive into native. If you're building a game, totally different story. You probably want to dip into some of the native APIs and maybe even consider if React Native is the right choice. But there's plenty of stuff you can read on that. All right, so we installed this, so let's see how we're going to use it. So it's, again, see full documentation. They link right over to it. Nice dark theme. Yes, yes, please, yes, thank you. Love it. Look at this. Love it. All right, so here's how we use it. So we're going to import it, storing data. So it looks just like local storage. The key difference, though, is it's explicitly async. Local storage is not. Even though local storage is technically a side effect, it's not an async, meaning it doesn't return a promise. So here we're going to be dealing with a little bit of difference there. So what we have here is a set item, but add a new data when no data for a key exists, and to modify existing data, just like local storage. Looks like we have set item, we give it a key and a value. Storing string value, storing object value. So we can actually store an object value. We just have to stringify it, just like local storage. Reading data, get item, again, just like local storage. This is fantastic. I actually wonder if this will work with web, if we even need to use local storage. I guess we'll find out. All right. Let's see, when we read a value, do we need to convert it? Yeah, we parse it. So very similar. So let's do this. Let's go into where we're doing that. So right now, we're handling that storage inside our brew list state. We might want to consider outsourcing or like, moving this code into a different component and calling it, like persist state or something. Right now we're doing it in our brew list state, which is kind of hacky. I think we could definitely move this. Well, in this case, this is actually just where we're getting it. I believe we are already persisting it in a different file. So let me find out where that is. So we have our add brew screen. When we create a new brew, persist state. And where is that coming from? Okay, perfect. So we already have a util for it. Maybe we can then make a getter for getting the new state. Okay, so it takes perfect. So we wrote it so it takes a key and a value. It stringifies the value. In this case, it calls local storage. So we're going to change that. We're already doing it async, which is great because that's going to work out well with async storage. But we're going to do a check. If we're on web, we'll use local storage. If we're not on web, we'll use async storage. But first, I want to see if async storage works with web. So I'm going to just try doing it. Let's see. So I go back to my docs, and I see I import async storage. Let's pull that in. And again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. I love questions. Happy to answer anything. Even if there's something funky you see with TypeScript, or you're like, what the hell is this weird color theme you're using? Whatever. Feel free to pop them in. All right, so here's async storage. And we're going to call set item. And they have it in a try catch because it's asynchronous, it could fail. So we'll do the same thing. So let's do try catch. All right, and so what we're going to do, and it's good that we're try catching here because we're trying to also stringify the value. So we're doing a few things in setting the item. We actually should probably wrap when we try to parse the string on the other side. Probably try to wrap that too. But okay, so we're going to do this, and then we're going to just await. We don't need to set it equal to anything because we don't care about the response. It's just, it's set and forget. We do care if it works. But if it doesn't work, what do we can just retry it. But let's just, for now, we'll just set and forget. So async storage, set item, and that's it. And if there's an error, let's see what they're just saving error. We're going to put a little console.error. We'll make it a log because we don't want to, we don't want to kill the app because of this. Failed to persist data. Okay, so async storage, very easy to change. Look how cool that is. It's the same API as local storage, so it's fantastic. But don't forget, we're going to have to do this on the receiving end, right, when we pull it out. So in our brew list state down here, we're going to have to get those items. Now, this is where the asynchronous is going to come into play. Local storage we were treating synchronously. Now we need to treat this as asynchronous because we're getting it from async storage. So here's a few things we can do. We can have our function up here, create an async function called get brews from storage, or we can call it actually get persisted brews. It's a async function. Can't spell today. And what we'll do is we'll pull this out. And what we need to do is import async storage here. All right. That's an await. And here we actually do care about the value. And then what we're going to do is, well, actually we could put it down here, and it doesn't matter, the constant will get hoisted, but just so for like the sake of using something after it's defined, I'm going to put it down here just for organization. And so what I'm going to say is default brews equal persisted brews. Actually we'll call this persisted brews string. Default brews equals persisted brews string. We're going to try to parse it. Otherwise, we use a fallback, and then we're just going to return default brews. All right. Now, what we're going to do next is we have that function, so that'll return the default brews. And again, it's asynchronous. So here, we'll comment this out. We don't need this anymore. But here, we're not going to be able to use default brews yet because it's, again, asynchronous. So what we're going to do is we're going to say get persisted brews. And we don't need to pass it anything, but what we do want to say is we want to chain it. It's a promise. It's going to return a promise. Then we're going to get back our brews, and here we'll call this. And so actually what we're going to want to do, so this is an interesting case because we need to export it here, and we can't define it here. So what we'll have to do is probably call a set on this. And so what I mean by that is we're going to need to modify the atom after we've already been using it. So we want to instantiate it as empty and then set it once we've got the persisted brews. That, or what we can do is we can set it initially with the hard-coded list and then modify it, but that kind of gets a little sketchy. So let's try it. Let's see how we can handle this. So this is going to be a cool use case. There's also a way to get, I believe, create atoms in an asynchronous way. So maybe we can take a look at that if this ends up being weird and we actually want to have our atoms get this data initially in an asynchronous way, because that's part of Recoil, right? You should be able to make requests, right, to get data and fulfill atoms, and they do have that built in. So actually, before I even try going down that path, let's see what it looks like. So if we go to docs, guides, asynchronous data queries. So there's a synchronous example. Synchronous atom and selector to get a username. Current user ID 1. Current username is selector. Key current username. Return it. Here they're using recoil value, current username state. Again, it's a selector. It's grabbing from our table of users, getting the current user ID state, which is this. So, table of users 1.name, and getting the username. Let's see how the asynchronous works. Oh, this is pretty cool. So it's an asynchronous selector. And what it's doing is, let's see, if usernames are stored in some database, return a promise or use an async function. If any dependencies change, the selector will be reevaluated and execute a new query. Pretty cool. All right, so let's check it out. So if it's a selector, current username. It's making, okay, so it's making a request with that, the user ID to get the user ID. Got it. So we could probably have like a brew selector on top of our brew list that will get those from storage if needed. Let's see what this looks like. Local state example. No. Okay. State from server. So in this is kind of like what we have, right? We have a default atom with, in our case, hard-coded data, but we want to actually fill it with data from our persisted async state. And so here what they're doing is current user info, use recoil state. Okay, so the very basic example. All right, sync state from server. Subscribe to asynchronous changes. Oh, okay. So they call use recoil state and get the basic state. In effect, they call remote state API. Not sure what that is. Let's see, is that something that's provided? Remote state API dot subscribe to current user ID. Set current user ID. So it's a setter. Okay, so okay, I get it. So they have this current user ID, they're gonna set it to this. Unsubscribe from current user ID. Very cool. Okay, so let's see how we can use this. So they have, we don't want a snapshot. Let's see, what do we got here? Use effect, bidirectional sync. Bidirectional sync we do not need. So let's see, let's server API dot unsubscribe. Set current user ID. All right, let's see what this is all about. So we have our selector, is recoil value, use recoil state loadable snapshots. No, we don't want snapshots. So what I'm trying to figure out here is what subscribe to current user ID, where that comes in. Current user ID subscription. Okay. Subscribe to asynchronous changes in the remote state and update the atom to match. Current user ID subscription, current user info. Remote state API, remote server API. All right, let's play around with it. Let's see if we can. I don't know if we're gonna need this right away. Okay, local state, because this is what we have. I'm trying to get this asynchronously. The other thing we can do is have the brews list pull the data from async and then set it, but it feels kind of awkward. So let's see what we can do here. So we have brews list, get brews is just going to pull us out the async version. We could default to the fallback brews. Let's try recoil state, set brew list. Let's do this. Let's try having, and I don't know if this is the right way to organize this. We probably do want to mess around with some of that async stuff and try to get it to work. I would just need kind of like more of an example on this. Let's see. Let's just search around. RecoilJS loading atom async. See if someone else has any cool docs in this. Okay. Okay, so they're having a selector that fetches the data. User detail selector, get, try, response. Okay, so it gets the data. Okay, so they're using a selector. We can use value from the atom to set the URL parameter of the body. Okay. I have this selector. Okay, so maybe we do want a selector because we're selecting. Huh. Interesting. Now I wonder though. Let's try this. Actually, this could be what we need. Now the only thing I'm wondering though is that we don't want to fetch from persistence every time we use the user details. And that's what I'm worrying about. Like, so if I call the selector, I don't want to try to get that data over and over, right? I only want to do it the first time. Maybe there's a way to handle that. Let's see if they're doing that here. So in this case, they're using suspense to show it or not. We'll probably end up doing something like that. Let's see. Let me go back to these docs real quick and see what. Okay. So this is the local state example. State from server. Okay, let me go back here. Selectors. Hold on, there's my async data queries. They had the state persistence. We tried that last time and ran into a few issues using that, so we're not going to use that. So that's the synchronous. Okay, so this is again the asynchronous example. So let me think how we could do this. We can try. Well, I guess if we, let's see what happens. Let's see if it works. Let's try a selector. So what we'll do is we'll change this to be a selector. So down here with our brew list state, we're going to change it to a selector. Instead of an atom. We'll change it to call it get brew list. It makes a little more sense. We'll have to import selector. And then we'll change our selector to, the key will be the same. Are they usually calling their selectors? No, okay. So we'll call it brew list state. And so what we'll do is we'll change, obviously we don't want this part, we want this bit here. So let's do that. And we can actually, this function's async, so that's fantastic. So what we can do is we can say, right in here, const, we can put this code here. Get rid of that. And we'll return default brews. And we'll export get brew list. All right. Hold on one second. I just want to see. I didn't use the get. I want to see how they're using the get. Oh, so in this case, they were actually using get was actually for selecting another piece of state, but we don't need to do that. So we can just do this, go back to what we had. And what I'll do is, since I'm not using get, I can either do that to say I'm ignoring it. Actually, that won't work. So what I'll just do is I'll just ignore it. I will just say that. All right. Let's see if this works. So we're exporting it now as get brew list. Again, I'm going to comment out this. We're not using that right now. Get persisted brews. I can still keep get persisted brews. I could have called that here. Why don't we do that? Why don't we do that? That's a little bit nicer because we already wrote that function. So we'll say persisted brews equals await get persisted brews, and then we'll return that to clean this up a bit. Okay, let's see how this is going to work. I'm very interested to see how this is going to work. So here I want to see how they're using it. So the way they're using it is use recoil value current user name query. So we're just going to import that and use that. It's going to be called get brew list now. So let's check it out. So we're going to go over to the brew list. And instead of brew list state, it's called now get brew list, which is here. And so we have get brew list, and we're gonna have to use that down here. Oh. And so let's see what it's saying. Oh, it's a selector. So we have to use recoil value. Now that's going to be a problem because we need to be able to set it, because that's how we're modifying this thing. So let's see if this is actually going to work. So it's going to say argument of type recoil value read only is not assignable parameter type recoil state any. So, right, selectors aren't settable. That makes sense. It makes sense because they're just derived from state. So what we can do is we really do need to, I think the way we're going to have to do this is using our set brew list. So let's go back to what we had. Sorry about the backtracking, but we're just figuring this out. Again, this is all part of the process, figuring out RecoilJS. So I have an idea for this. So we'll keep our brew list state. Let me go back to what I had here. We'll have our get persisted brews. We'll move this to a different function. And I'll show you why in a second. So let's move this to our persist state. And we can call it something else, like call it persisted state or something. So I'll move this function here so we have it in a singular place. We're going to change the name of this file to persisted state. We're going to update our imports. Yes, that's awesome. And we're going to have a persist state function and get persisted state function. I don't want to call it get persisted brews because we may be storing more in the state eventually, so might as well be generic with it. Even though right now we have this hard-coded, we're going to change it to the key, take a string, and it will return the value. And so here we'll say key. Okay, so this is going to go ahead and get persisted state string. We'll just change the name and make it more generic. State equals persisted state string. All right. And we will also do, okay, so state equals this. So what we'll do is we'll say, we'll return json.parse state, and in this case we'll return something like null or undefined. We can even just return this, but what we'll want to do here is specify. Okay, so string or null is not assignable to type string, so we need to just basically say that it's a string. So what we'll do is we'll just do a check, return state. If so, we'll parse it. Otherwise, we'll return null. Okay, and so we'll use this inside of our brew list for now. So the way we'll do that is inside our brew list. So I'm just going to change this back to, we don't need this here. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. And for now, we'll just have it default to the fallback brews. Okay, so we're back to just having default to the fallback brews, but in a second, we will actually pull this stuff from async storage. Okay, so now what are we going to do? So in our brew list, what we're going to do is we're going to set up a use effect. And we're going to try to pull from our storage in the use effect. And again, this might not be the best way to arrange this. I'm sure there's going to be a better way to do this within Recoil. And maybe we'll mess around with that and try that. But right now, I feel like I'm having a little trouble figuring out how the selector is going to work with pulling out of storage. And I know that clearly they have tried to solve this or have solved it, and that's the state persistence. But again, we had a little trouble using this, I had a little trouble using this last time. So I'm going to wait and see the docs for this kind of evolve before I get into it. It's also unstable, so we kind of opted to not use it. But again, we can always update. So the plan here is I'm going to have a use effect. I'll import that from React. All right. So we're pulling out our brew list state here. I'm going to set up my use effect. And I'm going to make it like a componented mount. So I'm just going to give it an empty array. Again, an empty array is kind of the same as a componented mount. Because there's nothing in here, it's not listening for changes on anything, so we'll only run once after component mounts. All right, so now what I'm going to do is pull in this get persisted state function. So let's pull that in. Import get persisted state from utils persisted state. All right, let's see what it says. Is declared but its value is never read, and also has no exported member get persisted state. Ah, good call. And actually what we'll do is we'll export this as a separate one. And then where we're calling persist state, which is happening persist state. Where are we calling this? I think we're calling it inside of our add brew screen. I think this is where we saw it. Yeah, there we go. Oh, persist state. Persist state. Did I spell it right? Oh, I did. Losing it. All right, so persist state. No, I didn't spell it right. Gosh. Okay. There we go. And we just have to make sure we call that correctly. Okay, so we have those two functions, great. Let's go over to our brew list again and mess around with that. So brew list, okay. We can get rid of that, we're not using it. We're going to use this in a second. So what we're going to do here is we're going to call get persisted state. It's asynchronous. It's going to return us the state or null, right? It's going to return us the state or null, and the state in this case can be the brews. So what we'll do is we'll say dot then brews, and then what we'll do is we'll say if there's brews, we want to set our we want to call set brew list. So we'll do brews and set brew list to those brews. And so it's going to complain because it's like, hey, whoa. I don't know the type of brews. I don't know if you can set it. Set brews list expects a list of brews. This isn't any. What is it? So we're going to tell it that it is of type. It's an array. So first we have to put it in parentheses. And we're going to say it's an array of brew, which I believe is what brews is. Let's see, brew list state is of type set brew list takes setter updater. Oh, it's an object, right, sorry. It's an object with brews in it. So it is, let's see, that's our type brew. Okay. So let's see what it's going to infer it is. Oh. Okay, so what is it going to think it is? Mostly has type any. Oh, we need to call this, obviously. All right, so calling this get persisted state, it says here, expected one argument because it expects a key, and our key in this case is going to be brews. Brews. So here we go. Parameter brews, type any, we're setting the brews. It would be nice if we can actually specify the type, but in this case, we don't really have a type for this. I mean, we do. It's a type string. It's keyed on string, and its value is a brew. So if we did want to type that, we could. Basically, what that would look like is, I believe, something like this. I believe that's correct. Let's try it. And the way we can test that is we can actually say that use recoil state is going to be of type brews and see if it complains. So here it's saying, let's see, argument of type blah, 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 blah. Brews is not assignable type. Okay, so that is not the correct one. So it looks like or CTAG or incompatible. So there is definitely a way to type this, but it's not complaining right now, so let's go back. And this way we can move on past it. But yeah, be something worth typing. So I'm going to actually add a to-do here. See if we can type the brews object. Because it would be nice, because if we can type it, that means we can prevent ourselves from causing issues where, let's say later on we add other things to state, right? We add, I don't know, maybe we add like a count or anything. There's gonna be a lot of stuff. If we add that to state, and then maybe let's say when we pull the state, we accidentally provided the wrong key, or we get more back than just the brews, TypeScript can tell us, whoa, the thing that you've parsed here doesn't match what we're expecting. So it would be a nice little safety net to have. But for now, what we'll do is we're getting our persisted brews and we're calling set brew list. So let's see if this works. Basically the flow here, what's happening, our brew list state's pulling from this default fallback brews. Our brew list is using those by default in this render right here, pulling out those brews. But then as soon as it mounts, we try to get the persisted brews from state. And once we get it, we call set brew list and we update the brew list. So let's see if this actually works. So first let's save this and go over to our web version. Let's refresh just to make sure things are, yeah, right, we're not even running it, so good thing we've refreshed. So let's run npm start. All right. Let's run our web browser. I'm gonna close this one. And we should run this in the simulator because we're using async storage now, so it should work. So let's try that. Open up that simulator. So yeah, async storage, pretty cool. It definitely did, like we saw, it's asynchronous, so it's a bit different than local storage, and that's why we ran to having that change things a bit, right? We had to change a little bit of how we do things. We went from having everything in our atom, which kind of was wrong anyway. It felt kind of gross. Remember we said that in the beginning, it feels a little weird, to having it separated out and having our brew list make that request. Again, I think eventually we would use the state persistence built into Recoil, but for now, I mean, I think this is pretty fine. So let's see. Okay, so there's our brew list. I'm going to close this one because it's giving me glare. Okay, so let's do this. Let's try to see if it works with our persistence. So it's calling something out here that's worth noting. Missing keys for items. Make sure to specify key or ID property on each item. That helps React when it's rendering to know when things move in the DOM. So let's just fix that really quick. I like to fix some of those errors early on. And so what that is in our item, we're passing a key to our brew item, but our brew item is a separate component. and it needs to use that key. So here, actually it should be using that key. Let's see what it might be talking about a different item. Or provide a custom key extractor. So we do have the key. I don't want to get too derailed with this. Let me just check really quick. Brew list. Yeah, we have a key. I'm wondering if we need to add it to that actual item though. Possibly. It could be. It could be. We'll check on that later. All right, so let's go ahead and add a brew and see if it actually persists. So brew name, we'll add the same one. Actually, let's switch it up. We're gonna go Neon Fantasy. Did I already add this one? Please tell me I didn't. I had this one the other day from Icarus. Woo! Awesome. Awesome beer. All right, sweet. All right. Coconut, Hazy, New England. Oh, what up, Doze? Doze in the chat. Lead hacks. Thanks, man. Thanks for hopping by. We're adding a little brew right now, testing our persistence. Let's see. It's from Icarus in New Jersey. Awesome brewery. The style there. New England IPA. Okay. For some reason, our ad's not showing up. Probably because the button has no background. Maybe we need to specify a background color. Okay, so there's our Neon Fantasy that we added. We can update that. Now, we got to test the persistence, all right? What we're going to do is we're going to refresh the app to see if it's still there. Ready? This is what we're testing. This is what we just coded. Bam. There's Neon Fantasy, but maybe you don't believe me. So let's close the app and see if it works. So we're going to go ahead like this. Hit this. I'm going to try to hit the shortcut to make it pop open the... Okay, so it did close it. Pulling back up Expo. There's Neon Fantasy. It's still there. Looks good. Let's do this. Let's do this. How do I? Let's not use the iPhone here. There we go. Let's close it. Open it. It's going to pop us into a screen here. Open that. Look at that. Async storage. Now, let's see if it worked on web. If it did, woo, it's going to be fire. Let's see. It might not. If it doesn't, easy. What we do is we just check. If we're on web, local storage. If we're not, async storage. Let's check it out. It's all going to go in here. Everything. So what we're going to do, oh yeah, Neon Fantasy. Chef Kiss. Great beer. All right, so let's check it out. Let's open up the web browser version and see if async storage works. If not, what is it going to do? Yell at us. That's fine. We don't mind. Let's delete this. This is our old local storage. Let's delete that. Let's refresh, make sure we're starting clean. Okay, nothing in local storage, no beer here. Let's go ahead and add Neon Fantasy here. Ooh, we got something. In our errors, let's see what this is. Okay, it's that same thing when it tried to focus. It's a weird web thing. Let's see. Neon Fantasy. Brewery, Icarus, style, New England IPA. All right, I'm going to add this. So see here, we were able to see the color. It's definitely something to do with the default on web versus default on iOS. So we'll mess with that. But let's go ahead and add this. Okay. Look at that. Bam. Async storage, baby. Works on web, works on native. One API for everything. Let's go. Nice, nice. All right, this is awesome. We got web working with this. Now look, we can refresh it. I can see it. I see it's in local storage. I know it's going to work. Let's go. It's going to work. Go ahead and hit the home screen. Bam, it's there. So that's awesome. So we swapped out local storage for async storage. Again, the Expo API. It handled web for us. Great. We probably could have just looked at the docs and see if it handled web, but I thought it was more interesting to learn on our own and see if it actually would. Check it out. It says it right there. Bam, 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 bam. Look at that. This is why Expo rules. I'm telling you, if you're building a React Native app and you're not using Expo, you better have a good reason because Expo is fantastic. Fantastic for stuff like this. And I mean, this isn't just, you know, this is a React Native community. You don't need to use Expo for this, but Expo makes it so awesome because it has the web version, it has the iOS version. Awesome. Yeah, one API. Let's go. I'm telling you, it's fantastic. So, all right, we got our storage down. Now, what's next? We have a few ways we can go with this. I think cleaning this up and making this to start look more like the design would be much better. We can get rid of that rating and start to design things a little bit better. So we'll dive into that. First, I just want to make sure that we've cleaned some of this stuff up a little bit. So I think this looks good. Just want to go over what we did. This part looks good. Fallback brews, this looks good. Our default brew list. Again, our brew list now has that use effect where we're getting the brews from storage. Again, we can add a type for a brews object. Let's see if we can do that. Let's look into that real quick. Whereful, nice. Yeah, it's awesome. Thanks for hanging out. It's so great. A lot of this stuff, I'm very surprised how much works with web, and it's awesome. All right, so let's see if we can type that brew list. So again, the object we're going to try to type right now, for all you like TypeScript fans out there, it's very powerful. We're going to try to type it. So where is it? It is the brew list state. We're going to try to type this. So you can see it's a little weird, right? It's an object that can have n number of properties. The properties are strings, and the values are brews. But we're not using the type brew in this case here. We're using it in our brew list. See? Right? But we want to specify that object. So let's look at how to type that, because I'm very interested by that. Hopefully you're all interested in that too. Okay, so the way I'm going to search this, I'm going to say TypeScript, how to type a map. Because that's actually what we have. We have a map, like a property, right? And an object. Mapped types for type maps. Oh my gosh. What is this? Let's see. Woo. What are they doing here? Woo. Okay. Whoa. I'm going to back up there a little bit. Looking a little intense. I kind of want to see like an example of what we have and see how that works. Let's look at advanced types. We're going to get into generics a little bit. It's going to be weird. We've used enums. We've used unit types. Now we need index types. What's this? Interesting. Map types. Okay, let me try searching this a different way. How to type a Java, let's say TypeScript, how to type a dictionary. It's kind of like a dictionary. It's not actually a thing in JavaScript, but it gives us an idea because we're looking stuff up, right? So, yeah, here's exactly what we're looking for. See, we have the lookup key, right? This is how we're looking things up, and then the object. In this case, the object's a brew. Let's see. Persons, ID string. Is that what it is? ID? Using the ID symbol, you can declare what type of keys are in the dictionary should be. Oh, let's check it out. Let's try it. Damn it, let's do it. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna try to do this inside our brew list state. We're gonna type this first because we have the object here and it'll tell us right away if our types are off. So let's do this. You know what's funny too? We actually probably want to figure out where we want to put these types because they're relevant across the board, right? Brew item is going to want to know about the brew type. So we could have like a types file. I generally stray away from that until you need to, but it looks like we might need to. Like have the brew type, have the brew list type. Let's see if we can. Let's see if we can defer that for a little bit and start coding it and then move things around as we need to. So okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to let's move this here for now so that we can use it. So we'll put that there. And then we want to say that this fallback brews is going to be of type, it's basically a dictionary, right, for looking up brews. So we're going to say export type brew list. We should call it like brew map. And it is of type, we just saw what they're doing here, ID string person. In our case, it's a brew. So we're going to basically say brew map is of type ID. Is this going to work? String brew. Okay, let's see. What is this actually doing for us? Okay. Now let's see if it'll let us type this as a brew map. Interesting. Okay. Okay, so that's all good. That's working. Let's go ahead and we're duplicating this type, obviously. We don't want to do that. So what we're gonna do, this is our default. Let's put it in here. It's weird having it in the atoms. We'll probably move it to a separate file. For now, let's just flow with it so we can see if this works. Then we'll move stuff around. That's generally how I work with stuff. Put it in the code first. I'm kind of like a do not repeat yourself until you've at least repeated yourself once type of person, because it gives you a better idea of how to optimize, right? If you use it twice, you know how it's going to be used, and then you know how to use it in a generic way, and it's easier to figure out how to make it reusable, right? If you just do it once and you think, oh, I should not repeat myself, let me make a reusable function, you don't have two examples of use cases. You only have the one example. So I'm a do not repeat yourself until you've at least repeated yourself once. Then you go into the do not repeat yourself mode. So repeat yourself once, then don't repeat. All right. So anyway, it's a little bit of my preference there. So some little good tip. All right. So what I'm going to do is for brew list, I'm going to go ahead and export that from here for now. I'm going to import it from here. Brew. Again, I'm importing the type. This is just a type. Brew map. What does that mean? I can toss this out. And VS Code will help me when I change imports too, which is fantastic. So the reason I added brew map was I wanted to type this entire brews object, this thing. I'm saying that this is now going to be of type brew map, and you can actually do that here. I can specify. Use recoil state. The state I'm using is of type brew map. So this is saying brew list state. It knows brew list state. Recoil state brew map. Check that out, right? And I'm saying use recoil state. I'm dealing with brew map type, so that means that it's going to know my set brew list accepts a brew map as an argument. Check that out. A setter or updater of type brew map. Now, had I not done that, look at what it says for the type there. It's inferring it. It's inferring it from here. And now, had I not done this, look at what it says for the type. Super interesting. Look at that. That's not a useful type. And it's not going to give us benefits where it's not going to be able to know if something's of the right type. It's just saying, hey, it's not of this type of this thing in the way it is. Darth Maul. Yes, sick beer. So it's important to kind of know the type. And I think we can just put it in this one spot. What? And it'll infer it. And now it knows. But I like to be explicit here at the time we're reading it. It doesn't hurt to just say, we're dealing with a brew map here. And now our type is much nicer and we'll have a little bit more safety there. And then when we go here, set brew list, you'll see it wants a valid updated brew map, but in this case we're giving it an any. We can specify here, brews should be of type brew map. And now it'll know that it's a brew map. And then here, the interesting thing here is get persisted state doesn't have to return a brew map. In this case, it sometimes returns null, right? Like if you look here, get persisted state can sometimes return null. But because it's a promise, we're saying it's going to resolve into a brew map. If it doesn't, we'll have an issue. It'll call it out. All right, so We'll eventually move those types out of Brew state, but for now we'll keep them there. This whole thing's typed. We're good to go. We got nice type inference. Awesome. Everything still works. We can add another beer. Someone want to, Dozeboy, you want to give me another beer in the chat to add? If anyone wants to put out a beer, I'll... Explicit state. Yeah, explicit state. It's nice. I'm going to throw your favorite. Oh, man. We got a Pilsner. Sometimes you got to go with the light stuff. All right. So there's our... Oh, where is it? Didn't add it. Uh-oh. What happened? Let's find out. Let's do a test. See why I didn't add it. Okay. So it didn't add it. So we have a problem. Let's figure out what that's about. It could be an issue with our persistence. The way we can debug this, we open this up. I hit Command D. You can also shake it. Juice Bomb, great beer from Sloop. That'll be our next one. We'll add that next. I'm going to go to Debug Remote.js. And again, usually I use the web version for debugging this stuff. But we'll try it out here. So again, let's let this load. Dismiss. Oh, okay, so they're there now, but it didn't show it instantly. So that's a problem. We got to fix that. Let's see how to do that. So let's add a brew. Add Juice Bomb. Thanks for that suggestion, Doze. Brewery is Sloop up in Hudson Valley, New York, in the Hudson Valley area. Fantastic brewery. Makes some really good hazy juice bomb. So I'm going to say the style is a hazy juice bomb. We'll call it a hazy boy. Okay. Let's add that and let's see what's going on. So we see here new brew ID to be added, Sloop Juice Bomb. Oh, it is there. You know what? It was probably that we hadn't refreshed, which is silly, but that's probably exactly what it was. So now if we refresh, it should persist that. Oh, everything goes as planned. Fantastic. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I want to clear out, I don't know how to clear out the device storage here. We'll figure it out. I'll use the web one for now anyway. I was going to say I want to clear out the device storage so we're dealing with a fresh state. But let's get into a little bit more of getting towards what we actually want. So we have a little less than an hour left here, like about 45 minutes. So let's try to get it to look a little bit nicer. We'll customize the form. I really kind of want to get us to the point where it's starting to look like our brew book. So step one, let's get the splash screen in there. What is the splash screen? Well, when you start the app, see that? That's where the splash screen would go, where that white blueprint looking thingy is. So let's put the splash screen in there. So how do we do that? It's pretty straightforward, but if we want, we could just look here. There's the app JSON's where we're going to handle it, but if you look here, you can look for a splash screen. SDK latest. I think we're on the latest. I mean, we're on 38. Is that the latest? So look, web, awesome. Works for everything. Again, this rules. We do have to install Expo Splash Screen. Let me make sure. I always like to first make sure I don't have it already. Not that it matters. It'll just update it. So we do have Expo Splash Screen. So let's just, we don't need to do that step. How do we use it? Let's see. Import it. Import splash screen. And let's see. The splash screen module tells the splash screen to remain visible until it has explicitly been told to hide. We don't actually need this. We actually just need this part where we upload our splash screen. So you just have to say where it goes. So let's try that first. Then we'll have to change like I don't think ours is the right size. Open up the app JSON, splash. Okay, so it's got to go in image assets splash PNG. What do we have in there now? No, not gonna work. All right, so let's go ahead and drop ours in. So I used Figma for this. If any of you are familiar with Sketch, it looks just like Sketch, acts like Sketch, but it's on the web. It's got a native app. I'm loving it so far. I might do, so I've mentioned I'm gonna do a one-off session on creating like a portfolio page using Gatsby.js. We'll probably do that either not next session because we'll probably still work on this, but the following session, it'll be 2 hours. We'll try to build the portfolio site, spin it up with Gatsby. And prior to that, I'll have designed out my mock portfolio site. And I'll do like a time lapse or something of me doing that in Figma in case anyone's interested in that. A separate video. Probably won't live stream it because it'll take me a little while to figure things out. But I will post a video of that on my YouTube. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to export this one here. So I just click, I click the artboard I want. I go over here and click export. It might be a little small for you to see. I can try to zoom in. Oh, no, don't do that. I'm going to export it as a PNG. I'm going to show that. And I'm just going to rename it to splash.png. Splah. Okay, now let's take that and let's move it to here. We're going to replace it. Okay. Colors are a little different looking. I think these were a little more saturated and nice. I think it probably, I don't know, maybe got sampled oddly, but we can, yeah, like that orange isn't coming through as nice. That's okay. We can deal with that later. For now, let's see if it works. So let's open up our thing here. If we refresh, there you go. There's your splash screen, brew book. So it doesn't cover the whole top. I think that's customizable. We open up our app.json. So we have contain. We can change that to, I think, cover. I'm guessing here, but let's see. Yeah, cover. So that looks pretty cool. Nice. Let me get rid of some of this like inspection stuff. Let's hide the performance monitor. Stop remote debugging. So there you go. There's your splash screen. Pretty cool. Easy to do. Expo, again, makes it super easy. It's fantastic. Okay. So we have our splash screens there. That's great. You can see it there. We don't have an icon, but we don't really need to deal with the icon yet because, again, we're still working in the confines of the Expo app. The cool thing, if we did have an icon, here, let me see if I can show what this looks like. Let me just do this. Close that. If we did have an icon, I believe it would show up, if I remember correctly, here. So we could try it. Let's see. Let's see if we can grab something from our Figma to make an icon out of. And they actually have icon guidelines here. We have our configuring splash screen and app icon. And so here, this looks older, but you have your assets directory. You can change the background. We have the image. We have the mode. We changed it to cover. App icon. Here's like a 124 pixels by 124 pixels. Let's do that real quick. We can make that happen. We'll pop in Figma. Create a new artboard. Let's see, how big does that have to be? It has to be one, what was it? 1024 by 1024. All right. Okay, let's see, where's my measurement here? Let's see. Actually, you know what? They have icon. If I do this, I believe yeah, I thought they had it. Well, anyway, let's just put a small, we'll put this for now. We can always scale it. So we'll do that. We'll just add something basic to it. Maybe even just like snapshot this portion. It's like kind of cheating, but let's try it. Let's do this. Actually, let's capture the whole thing. We'll just move it. Just for now. Just so we have something. Oh, great. We got that in it. Again, this is not the right way to do it, but whatever. We'll just do it for now. Paste it here. Adjust it. Adjust it. Just so we have something, and then we can modify it. We can always modify it later. Where's the image? So we have the image. I want to move that a little bit. Let's see if we can, how do I inch it over a little bit? Okay. A little crooked. We'll deal with it. Nothing too important. We could probably even move this board around it. Okay, whatever. Let's try using this. So we'll export it. Just a little icon for now. Let's open it up and just inspect it. So they really should be at 1024. So the size of this one right now, if we were to look, is what we have. Yeah, we would have to scale that up a bunch. So let's just do this. Let's just so we can see what it looks like. We're obviously not going to use this one long term, but we'll toss it on there. So we'll just say, and it should notify. I'm pretty sure it will tell us that it's not the right size. But let's go ahead and try it for now. And so we'll drop this in here in assets under icon. Right now there's nothing. So put that there, replace. There's our icon. It's way too small, but if we load it, let's see if it actually shows up. There you go. So when it's actually on, you know, if we actually want to build this, we'll make it much higher res and bigger, but there you go. You get an idea of how that works. And there's our splash screen. There's our page. Cool. Again, not a designer, so apologize ahead again for my Figma hackery, but I'm definitely liking Figma, so down to dive more into that. Maybe not, you know, in these coding streams or anything like that, but in the future. All right. Let's clean stuff up. Let's get it looking a little bit better. First thing that really stands out, obviously, well, these stand out, the orange, right? But the other thing that stands out is tab 1 title. We don't want that. In our designs, we don't actually have a title, so we can totally get rid of that if we want, or we could just put my brews or something. So let's put that temporarily and then modify that later. So for that happens in our bottom tab navigator. We have this header title. Change that to my brews. Here we have a header title too. We're going to change that to add brew. We're going to go to our add brew screen. And we can get rid of that extra title. So now if we go back to our thing here, we have my brews, add brew, there's our form. Okay. So next thing, I noticed that we have a background. We're using like a gradient background. So you can actually do gradients. It's different in React Native. It's not just like a CSS thing. We actually have to use a gradient view. So let's do that. So what we do for that is this linear gradient. So this is how we're basically going to have a view that's a gradient. Let's see if we need to install it. If I go to my package.json. Yeah, so it looks like I do need to install this one. So let me stop that. I like to stop it to install it so that we know it starts fresh when we get it. I don't think you have to, but it's easy. Okay, so we're installing linear gradient. And what we'll do is we'll make that the background of our view. So the way the linear gradient component works, I've used it before, but basically you have this gradient. It's essentially like a view, and you put it within your actual view component here, you can see, and you can give it colors. So we have the transition right there and some styling. So what we can do is kind of pick our colors from Figma. The way that works, if I go into Figma, I'm using this gradient here behind here, and I can just, what I can do is I can pick this board, and you can see we have our different components to this board, but it's actually the board itself that has the gradient. And if I click the gradient, I can actually see, actually I might be able to even click code. Yeah, awesome. So code actually is giving me the gradient. The 180 degree, that's the angle that we're dealing with. For now, we'll just try the two colors and see what it looks like, and then we can adjust the angle accordingly. All right, so back to our code here. Let me just take a look at linear gradient again. So we're gonna pull in this component. So I'm gonna just copy this for now, and we'll mess around with it. So, and you can see here they put, in this case, they're putting a button inside the linear gradient. Now the interesting thing about this is they put text in and called it a button. I'm not sure why. We're not gonna do that. But we're gonna put a linear gradient around our view. So, which view? We're gonna do it to the bruise list first. So let's go to our bruise list. And maybe we might actually be able to do it like at a higher level. What I mean by that is if our bruise list, right, is being rendered by our bottom navigation, we might be able to do something where we're setting it at a higher level here, like maybe within here. But I like to keep this as like the navigation logic and kind of keep this separate. So we're gonna put it over here. And so the way we're gonna do this is I'm going to change one of these views to be the linear gradient. So first, let me import it. Let me copy this down here so I don't lose it. Where am I importing it from? Expo linear gradient. I'll just copy that. All right, linear gradient. And so what I'll do is I'll change this view to a linear gradient. Let's see if this works. I don't remember if I had to have a high level view or not. Let's see, and I'm just gonna change this. Let's get rid of this. Get rid of that and change this down here to linear gradient. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna change the colors really quick to match these colors. So we have two colors. That one and that one. So let's copy this. Figma's really cool. The code tab. Sketch had that too. But yeah, I'm liking Figma so far. So let's do that and this. All right. Let's see if that did anything. Let's refresh. We might need to change the background on some of the other components. Oh, right. We have to start a server. All right, let's see how this works. Okay. Refresh that. There's our brew book. And what's going to happen? See, that's the cool thing about the splash screen. We don't have to stare at that blueprint anymore. Yay! So there's our gradient. Right away, some glaring issues. Kind kind of does look like a beer on my end. I don't know about on your end. Kind of looks like a beer on my end. It's pretty cool. But some issues, right? The top nav, still white. Bottom nav, still white. If we want this to kind of go behind the whole thing, we are going to have to reach up to that nav level and change things. And I think, you know, based on what we have here, we don't care about the bottom nav. And we actually, in this case, don't even have a top nav. That's not probably the best design choice. So maybe we'll just make a top nav. We'll make those just like the solid orange color or something. But the other thing I want to do is I want to add that like weird thing that I did with the transparency on each of the items. This way it's not just like really, really hard to read. So let me give that a shot. So for that, those are the Brew items. We can actually add it to our list probably, right? We can actually put that transparency on the entire list. So let's go to our Brew list. Brew list. Okay, so here's our Brew list. Again, that's this thing here where we have the background. And let's change our flat list, this list container, to have that transparency. Background color. And what we're going to do here is, I forget if I can do Rgba colors. Let's give it a shot. So let's see what we need. We need perfect. I don't know if this works in React Native. I don't remember. Let's give it a shot. Worst comes to worst, it doesn't work, and we try something else. And it worked. I knew it would work, everybody. I was just messing around. I knew the whole time it was gonna work. I knew it. No, I had no idea. But this is cool. A little bit different than what we have here. Maybe. I think it looks okay. We obviously, this average rating thing, let's get rid of that. We don't need that anymore. That was, again, we were using that to test recoil. Before we get rid of it, let's send it off with one last recite of why we did that, because I think it's kind of cool. I'm going to open up the web one again to show why we had that there. Get out of here. Okay, so I'm just going to really quick, before we get rid of that average rating. Again, the reason we did the average rating was to see the benefits of recoil. Part of the reason for this whole segment was to try recoil. We did. We're going to continue doing it. So I just want to show one more time what that was able to do for us. So we put that rating there to show that we can have a component outside, totally separate part of our state tree, be updated when we update each of the Brew items and not affect the overall list. So again, I have my thing here that shows re-renders. You can see when I modify an item, it just re-renders the item and just re-renders the average rating, because that's using a recoil selector. Super cool. But we're going to say goodbye to our rating module because it doesn't fit in our current list. Maybe we'll add something like that later, but again, very cool. We could see those re-renders happening. I think it's super cool. Before we had this, the whole list was re-rendering the outside. You could see it re-rendering. Now, if you have thousands and thousands of items, and they talk about this on the recoil video, you have tons of items, you're gonna be drinking a lot if you're using beers, but maybe you're not. Maybe you're reading a lot. Maybe we're using books for this, whatever. You're gonna have a lot of books. You're gonna sort and filter them, whatever. But when you modify one, if you have an action on this page that you can take on one, you don't want to re-render that whole list. Even if each individual item is memoized, you still don't want to redraw the flat list. It's just inefficient. Recoil is giving us that benefit. So thank you to Recoil. Excited for that. Let's get rid of this rating. Look, I didn't even fix it. I didn't even fix it. Look at this. It's a mess. 1.16666666666. Come on. Amateur hour. Let's get rid of it. Goodbye, average rating. All right, so let's get rid of that. Later. That's going to create some dead code. What code, you may ask? Our brew rating state. I'm going to keep it, though. We might use this. We might not show it like trash like I had it before, but we might still use this. So I'm going to keep it around. If we don't end up using it, we'll ditch it. We'll use a little tree shake action. Get rid of the unused stuff. Go from there. But okay, so we're here. We're a little bit closer, right? Getting a little bit closer to that dream That dream design. I know it's so great. I need to get rid of this orange. It's in my face. It's aggressive. We're going to just change it for now to just be a gray thing. So let me change that. So for that, that's inside our brew item. Again, we have our React styles. And again, if you're not familiar with React styles, if this is looking a little weird to you, that's totally okay. We're not using style components here. We easily could. If you're familiar with style components, you could easily pull those in. Start writing your CSS in that way. I may do that in the future. I use it at my current job. They're very cool, but I'm just pretty comfortable with the React built-in styling. It just uses camel case instead of, what do we call it? Train case? I forget. Kebab case. But pretty comfortable with it. But again, you could pull in style components. I've never done it with Expo. I'm sure many people have though. So let's go ahead and change that color from tomato, which is my favorite CSS color. Let's just make it like a nice gray, just so it's not aggressive. Let's go with like AB. Okay, let's see what that looks like. Cool. Let's go a little lighter than that. Cool. All right, so that's pretty okay for now. So we're gonna go ahead and add a little bit of, well, we can get rid of these rating things probably soon. Let me refresh that. I don't know why that wasn't working. Okay, so I might get rid of these rating things in a little bit, but for now, let's keep it because we're still, maybe probably using that to go over our state and stuff. But let's add a little padding to these items because they're looking kind of rough. So one thing you could do is you can use this element inspector and you can inspect these and see what you're dealing with, like you're on the web. I find this a little rough to use. It's not the best, I think, for doing styling. So what I would prefer using in this case is I would probably go towards this. I would use the web one, and then just translate the styles over. So for the web one, you click here, you're gonna see what that is. If you want to see what the component is, hey, you just go to the component view. You click that, we pull up this component, we click it. We're gonna see what component we're dealing with here, or not, or it's gonna jump me back over to the, no, there we go. So you see the view, we can see what we're dealing with here. But yeah, we'll make some changes, and I usually play around with it first in Chrome, and then translate the styles. So, like for example, what I do here is we have our item here. So maybe add something like padding and just see what it looks like. We can add padding on the top and see how that looks. That looks much better. So maybe something like that. You saw if I add it like that, it'll also indent it a bit. In our design, we have it indented a little bit, not much. Sorry, I lost myself. But at least a little bit. So I think doing that might work. Obviously, you see it made these a little bit too close together, but we'll clean that up in a second. So let's do that. Let's add a little padding. So for each of our containers, we'll do a padding of 12. We're using numbers, not pixels here. In React Native, you use numbers. It breaks the screen up based on the screen size. So it's kind of like you're doing percentages, or you can think of it like EMs or REMs because it's all relative. So we'll use 12 here, and you'll see on my native one. Let's see if that's actually going to work. Did I put it on the right view? Brew item, padding, there we go, okay. So let's space out these a little bit. So again, this part here is we have our image, which is complaining because there's no source. Obviously, your image would normally have a source. TypeScript's telling me, hey, there's no source. It's nice that it's calling it out, but right now we're not too worried about that. We're just going to press on. So here, what we're going to do is we have this info container. And so the info container contains the name and the brewery. The info group contains the style and the rating. So this is one group here on top, and this is one group here. And what we're doing is we're spacing them, we're justifying them apart. And you can see that down here. Info group, space between. So that makes them have the space between. What we can do instead is we can put them a little closer together, which would give us space on the sides. And to do that, we can do something called space evenly. But it's not going to be exactly what we want. You'll see in a second why. So not exactly what we want, right? Because it's going to put them kind of randomly placed. The other option we have with justify content is space around, which is going to give us space around them. What we actually, though, we want is space between, because we want to push, we want to make them be aligned, right? So I think that's what we want, right? Let's see what our style has here. Yeah, so they're aligned on those edges. So let's do that. Let's go back to that, and then we'll just put some padding on them. So we'll do space between. Space between. I can never not sing that song when I type this. I'm sorry. And let's put some padding on them, on the left and right, to get them away from that image a little bit. So I want to bring this one in a little bit and this one in a little bit. And if you look at our current view, this is right. This is in a little bit. And the reason this one's in a little bit is because we've padded the entire, well, I'll show you. We've padded that entire view. So like if we go here, sorry, there it is. I lost it. If you look here, we've padded it. We've padded the whole thing on the left and right. Another thing we can do is we can pad the whole list to bring it all in instead of padding the individual item like I did there. That might be a better way to handle this. And now I'm rethinking things, and I'm thinking that might be the way to do it. So what I'm going to do is take the padding off. Well, we still want the top padding on these. So maybe let's keep it this way. Let's keep it this way because we want the lines to go to the edge. If we padded the list, the lines wouldn't go to the edge. These lines. We want those to go to the edge. So let's leave it like this. But let's change the padding in here to pull this in a little bit. And we can do that a few ways. We can either put a margin to the right of the image. We can put evenly, we can put these inside a flexbox and space these evenly. And then you're using layout to move things, which is, I always prefer to use layout rather than margins. Once you start introducing margins, things get weird, I find. So I like to try to do as much as I can with layout rather than margins. So if we look at the structure again, it's probably easiest to look at it in here. I don't know why it's so nested. I apologize for that. That's because of the way it's getting rendered via React Native. Again, something to consider if you're actually thinking about putting a production, if you're thinking about putting a React Native, I mean, look at this. This isn't the optimized production build, but if you really are thinking about building a React Native app and having it go onto web, a lot to consider. We mentioned it before. Semantics are poor right now. It's rendering a div for everything. Look at this nesting. I mean, rough. But maybe that'll get better. Maybe the production build's better. We'll see. But I mean, come on. It's pretty sweet having to get the web for free, and you get the benefits of being able to debug it, which is great. But so again, what I'm looking at here is the hierarchy of what we have. So I have my info group, so top, bottom. Here is our whole thing that's grouping that entire piece. Here's our image, which is inside a div. All right. Oh, okay. We're using background image. Okay, I understand there. And so inside that we have, those are both contained within this. And so this has flex direction row, but it's not justifying its content in any particular way. So let's try messing around with that and see what we could do. Let's see if this does anything. So space between, not seeing, seems like it's not actually modifying anything. So let's see if we, you know why probably? There's no space. There's no space for it to do that. So we'd have to specify that this thing doesn't take up the whole width to do that. So what we can do is we can make this smaller and make this like a, instead of being a flex 1, we could do like, and that would make it slightly smaller. See what I did there? And now if I actually add some justification here, it will work. Space between. See? Space evenly. You'll notice, now that looks pretty good. We have a little less control though using these. It's going to depend on how big things are. But I do like the idea again of using layout. So let's try that. Let's go to do this. Let's make our info container box. Instead of being flex 1, let's make it be flex 0.8. That gives us 0.2 of flex to kind of adjust things a bit. And then what we'll do is our container overall will justify stuff. Space. Let's see what space around looks like. And if not, we'll try space between. All right. See what that looks like. Let's see what this looks like. I'm liking it. I'm liking it. It doesn't quite match our design in that if we pull that up, I mean, nothing really matches the design yet. But we have things a little bit closer. Things are a little spaced. What we can do if we want to reduce that amount of space that we have to work with is we can up this. We can up that to like, say, a 9 and see that looks, I think that looks great. Let's go with that. Now, I mean, if I was actually building this, right, to the exact spec, what I would probably do, you know, if you're working with a designer, if you're an engineer on a team working with a designer, you'd probably, you know, want to click and actually measure how much space they're expecting between things and actually use padding and margins. But because I'm the designer and the developer, and these designs are just made up by me, I'm going to tweak them to make it fun to code, and none of it's, you know, this isn't going to production or anything, so I'll stick with this. Okay, now the other thing I notice here is there's obviously different text sizes, so we'll want to handle that. But also, I'd like to space out these a little more. Well, first I want the brewery name to be slightly bigger, and then I want to space those out more. Let's start with the brewery name being slightly bigger and see how that plays out. So for that, I find where I have the brewery name, and I want to give it a unique class. Instead of using class, we're using React here, so I'm going to say styles dot brew name. Okay. I haven't written this yet, so I'm going to write it down here. Brew name, and then we can play around with the font sizes. So font size, let's try 18. I don't know what that's going to look like. We'll just mess around. Not bad. Not bad at all. In fact, I think that might be pretty good. Maybe one. Let's try one smaller. Let's try 16. Sorry, too small. I don't know. Let's go with that for now. Okay, because everything's a little smaller, you can see, than what I have here. We'll change things. When we start adding images, we'll make those circles bigger too, and things will start to look nicer. Okay, now I wanted some space in between the top line and the second line, so let's get into that. So for that, if we look here, sorry, I'm jumping around so much. Whoops. We want to space out this view and this view. Okay. There's an easy way to do this. We could pad each of these views. That would move them. We can try that right here. What we'll do is we'll click one of these. Maybe the first one. I don't know. They seem to be sharing the same class, which is good because we gave them the same class in React Native. So if I change one, it should be able to change the other. So if I hit the plus, it'll give me the class, which is fantastic. And now what I can do is I can say padding. If I do, like, watch this, 12 pixels, you'll see, wham, it did it all around it. I just want the top and the bottom, so I'll give it 0 for the horizontal. Okay, but let's reduce that a bit. Obviously, that's way too much. Let's see what 4 looks like. 4 looks good to me. So we're going to put, and you can see, this is the interesting thing. Notice I don't know, let me see if you can see that. Let me zoom in so you can see that. That 4 pixels there, yeah, okay. See how that's, thicker green in the middle? That's because you're getting the sum of the bottom padding and the top padding of the other one. We could just add bottom padding to the first item, and that would push down the bottom item. But I think this is a little more consistent and actually gives us the look we want, which is good. It's one easy property, gives us the look we want, and we can put it right onto our info group. Or is it info group? It's info. Info group. Yeah, okay. So our info group padding for, I think we just have to do padding vertical in React Native land. Padding vertical 4. And let's see what that looks like on here. There's our splash screen. Woo! All right, let me just get rid of this inspector. I'm not a huge fan. So there's our list. Again, we have the nice scroll interaction. We have our list. It still increases and decreases, even though we don't really want to do that from here. And so we're getting a little close to that style. Let's change the bottom tab color to be orange. And then we only have 10 minutes left, so we'll probably do that. And then we'll push this code up and end it for tonight. Again, whatever, I'm going to push the code up. It's on GitHub. Feel free to pull it down. I will post this on YouTube after. If you have the time to go through the whole series, then, I mean, that'd be awesome. I would really appreciate that. It'd be super cool to see if someone follow along. It's a lot of hours, though. So if not, just pull down the code, follow along, hack on it yourself, change things. These are posted on YouTube, so you can always watch them. And again, in the future, we'll be doing some more one-off sessions. So breaking the 2 hours into one single thing that we're building. So I want to do the portfolio site with Gatsby, try building a memwise function. I want to dive a bit into React hooks and building custom hooks. So I'll have a few more one-off sessions after we finish this initial video series. I'm really liking the live coding, so definitely going to continue with it. I'm excited to have anyone who wants to join along. All right, so we're going to change the bottom tab to orange to match our design on Figma. So to do that, first I'm going to get the color. And then I'm just going to go over to our docs here and see how to change the background of the tabs in our Expo app. So those tabs are rendered, again, via React Navigation. So I'm going to pull that up. Pull up the docs for React Navigation, and let's see what's going on. So we're going to go here, and we're just going to do a search for bottom Tab Navigator. And in here, we'll find out how to actually customize that. Check this app out. It's putting my app to shame. Looks so good. Come on. We can get there. We can get there. All right, so let's see how we can actually change the color of this thing. So we have if you look here, we have our bottom tab navigation. It has some options. These are for the actual tabs, but for the bottom tab itself, we have bottom tab screen. We have our tab icon color. We should be able to change the background color using something in this options object. So let's try to do that. All right, let's see. What do we got? Tab bar. Function that returns a React element to display as the tab bar. That's kind of cool. So you can customize the tab bar. We'll probably do that because if you look here, we have like this. We could probably do some cool stuff where we like make, this thing shorter and this thing appear outside the tab bar. That'd be kind of cool. Again, not a designer, but just some stuff I'm thinking about. Okay, let's see if we can just do a search for color. Okay, so these are for the icon. You have active tint color, inactive tint color. Those reflect the colors when a tab is active. Here we're using blue. Here is gray. That's done here. Let's see. What else we got? Tab style object for the tab item. It's pretty cool. Style object for the tab bar. Okay, let's see if that's what we can use. Tab bar visible, blah, 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 tab bar button. Okay, so I think we can use that style property. So where do we provide that? We provide that as what? Oh, that's actually for the entire tab bar. Let's see. Screen component. Okay, that's what we have here. Tab screen. Okay, so screen options. Let's see. Can we go into what these are? Okay, that's the screen options. What else do we have? Behavior. Initial route. Tab bar. We don't want to return a whole new tab bar. I would like it if we just customize the existing one, but we might not be able to. So we will see. Okay, an object containing the props for the default tab bar. So this is probably where we want to put that. But what can we pass here? Options. Title, tab bar icon, tab bar label, tab bar badge. Let's see if we can. Let's see what options we can give. Color. Okay, let's see. Options. Let me do this. Let's see what we can do. So bottom tab. Those come from here. Create bottom tab navigator. So we want to do is, that's kind of basically what they have here. They're just using the word tab. We called it bottom tab. So let's figure out what the options are for a bottom tab. React navigation, bottom tab, options. This is just going to take us back to these docs. I'm trying to figure out where, let's see, color. Okay, that's for the whole thing. These are for the icons. Okay. Let's see if we can just do, oh wait, let's see where tab bar icon is, because that's, we can use that tab bar icon. Options. Okay, so tab, okay, here are the options. So tab bar icon, okay, we already have that. Tab bar button, tab bar badge, tab bar label, title. Okay, so we can't customize it here. We can just customize the icon. But maybe props. Okay, props. What are the props we can give it? I think style was one of the props. Label style, tab style. And style. All right, let's just try giving a style. Style equals, I'm just going to do it inline just to see if it works. And let's just go with our color here of where's our little orange thing here? It's the final color of our gradient. So if we just go to our board here and we pop this open, it's this color. So let's go ahead and put that here and see if that works. Let's see. No, I don't think so. You know what? Let's put it, we might have to put it up here on this level. Let's see. Ooh, what does it say? Okay, so there's no, maybe we can put it, okay, we can't put it there, active tint color. We should be able to put it on the tab itself. It didn't seem to complain. Let's see what's going on. Maybe maybe we can inspect it. Let's inspect it here. See if we can dig in and see what's going on. So it's got a background color there of 000. So maybe what we actually need to do, let me try something. Let me see what tab 1 Navigator looks like. It's a Navigator. Okay. All right, so let me try doing something like this really quick. We're running out of time, so if this doesn't work, we'll just revisit. I just want to try changing the color and see if it modifies anything. Okay, so this obviously this prop is not taking effect. So we'll have to figure out how to change that color. I'm sure it should be pretty straightforward. If not, we'll just create our own custom tab. I don't think we should have to do that though. I'm pretty sure there's a way to do it. It might literally just be to change the background because it's just transparent right now. That could totally just be what it is. And changing the background will fix that. But we will get to that next time. We're already over 11, but I don't mind going over because I have so much fun hanging out with everybody. Thanks for anyone who should pop by. Again, this is just me coding live, learning Recoil, messing around with React Native, building a fun app, chatting and sharing it with everybody. I have a lot of fun doing it. Happy to do it. I'm going to continue doing it Tuesdays, 9 to 11. Again, keep an eye out. I'm going to be wrapping this app up and then getting into some more one-off series where each night we'll be building something different. Keep it kind of fresh and fun and easier to digest and jump into for newcomers. Next week, what we'll do is we'll get those tab bars colored, and then I want to start playing around with that image import. I want to see if we can get it so that we can import images. I think that'll be a fun thing to dive into. It might take us the full 2 hours, or it might be really quick. Expo's pretty slick, so it should be pretty easy. But so again, thanks for hopping by. If you like what you saw, feel free to give the channel a follow. It'd be greatly appreciated. I have the Twitter handle up there. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's just Tom McGurl, my name. There's a GitHub URL right there. You'll be able to find the repo, Brewbook React Native, where you can follow along, pull down this code, modify stuff, figure out how to change the tab color, and then send me a PR. But yeah, again, thanks for following along. I'll catch you all next Tuesday. Appreciate it. Take care. Have a good night.